Pokemon with guns. That is what Palworld has so aptly been defined as. Many have described it as Ark, but Pokemon. It doesn't really matter though, because Palworld is one of the most addicting games I've played in years. I've put almost 40 hours into the game in a few weeks that I've been playing it, and I think that is only going to grow over the coming weeks and months. What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is man Jet Set Shattuck dropping some hot frogga on this mic, and I'll preface the video with this. I am a Pokemon fan. I haven't played Gen 9, but I've played every game up until then. I wanted to say this because I will be talking about Pokemon eventually. This isn't a replacement for Pokemon, but many of the game's mechanics and designs are Pokemon-esque. On top of that, Nintendo has attempted to sue the company, not for designs, but for gameplay mechanics. I feel this is scummy and uncouth behavior. I also feel like the damn near lifting of designs and models from a pre-existing franchise is damn near close to art theft. I wanted to get this out of the way before people assume things about what I believe or any biases I may have when talking about Palworld. I'm not gassing up this game for the sake of gassing up something that looks like Pokemon. It's genuinely a good game. It has its problems, and I wanted to address the controversy here before I address it later. So, what makes Palworld so good? The game has a relatively solid survival experience. Progression has been tweaked since pre-release and is now a lot more sensible. Pals, the Pokemon-like creatures that the game is aptly named after, are perfectly entwined with the game's survival and progression systems. Pals serve combat, base, and traversal functions, and there's just a ton of tiers and materials used in crafting. You also have a lot of options when building out your base, whether it be materials, different types of items, etc. On top of this, the game just encourages exploration. Pals are properly spread out across the world. On top of that, there's a ton of dungeons, materials, and pals to collect. In conjunction with this, the terrain is varied not only in design but mechanically as well, encouraging you to use a myriad of items, mounts, and traversal techniques to get across the map. Pals have regional types and variations, meaning that just because you catch a pal somewhere doesn't mean another version of it doesn't exist that isn't better suited to your needs. And there's just, again, a myriad of ways to explore. Pals that allow you to mount them, gliders, grappling guns, climbing, etc. Base building is also pretty in-depth. The further you get, the more bases you get access to, and the more the game pushes you to basically specialize them. On top of that, automation is relatively easy once you begin getting a hang of things. In general, you have a lot of controls over what pals do. You can assign pals to specific tasks, task categories, and even decrease and increase the intensity of their work. The game utilizes a system called SAN or Sanity, and this is just basically a system that measures the amount of mental and physical well-being of your pals. The lower this number, the less likely your pals are to work, the more likely they are to get injured, and the slower your progress becomes. It's very intuitive. Basically, they're telling you to treat your slaves well. Talking about pals, every pal has some type of use, even the ones you catch at the beginning of the game. Buffs are definitely a reason to switch in and out pals. Many of them will buff either a general survival function, a combat function, or a base functions operation. And then just many of the early game pals remain relevant due to their ability to slaughter pals for resources. Also, just many of them have basic resources that are used well throughout the entirety of the game. Every typing usually has a pal that specializes in one or more of the different base technique areas, usually meaning that your base is going to be pretty varied with what pals you have in there anyways. They've also fixed a lot of the pal designs that were obviously based on Pokemon to make them more original and fit the art style better. They haven't done this for all pals, so don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that some of the pals still don't look the same, because a lot of them do, especially the ones that were very obviously made earlier in the game's development. But I think the argument can be made that this is much further from the plagiarism claims and just much closer to being unoriginal, if anything else. I also really do wish they leaned more into the Palworld style designs, because they're honestly really good. One of my favorites so far has been Wispa, but there are plenty of others that meet this criteria of just being well-designed monsters in a monster taming game and just being really original looking. I just wish they would have done it more when they were earlier in development. The combat is also pretty good. It's nothing combo heavy or anything to really write home about in the sense that it's unique, but fighting alongside your pals with various weapons and toolkits is pretty fun. Much of the range combat is shooter-based, focusing on hitting weak points and precision while also managing ammo. Melee combat is pretty simple but allows you to conserve ammo, especially when fighting smaller pals or humans, and pals integrate nicely and fight alongside you passively. They can also be actively involved via mounting and ability systems. Mounts typically allow you to manually use any of their attacks with the stipulation that they won't auto attack, and they also have stamina just as you do. and typically abilities can vary from things as innocuous as healing to the pals becoming weapons or brandishing weapons and utilizing you, the player, as the mount. Overall, Palworld sounds awesome, but it does have some glaring flaws, and I want to talk about them now. I talked about this before, but many of the pals are just Pokemon rips, at least in essence. This isn't a first for Pocket Pair, and I doubt it'll be the last time they get as close to plagiarizing as they have with this title and just many others in the past. The game is also very menu heavy, which is fine, but I just wish it was slightly more controller friendly. I've played on both keyboard and mouse and controller, and when you're just navigating the world, I think controller is a lot better of an option. But when you're using the menus, keyboard and mouse is obviously the better option. And then in conjunction with this, the game is also quite buggy, especially when you're using a controller. The menu just stops functioning quite a bit of the time. I've had to emergency respawn a few times because I've fallen through the map. I'm glad that exists in the game, especially a survival game like this. And just the AI path tracking for pals and even enemies and some other NPCs just breaks all the time. This kind of messes up any automation you have going on in your base, forcing you to kind of get directly involved with moving pals, which is frustrating for a few reasons. It stops the automation and just kind of slows progress in what is ultimately a grind heavy game that pushes you into whittling down that grind as much as possible and automating it as much as possible. Many pals get injured and just lose sanity, the game's measurement of pal mental and physical health, causing you to basically have to nurse them back to health, wasting time and resources because the pathing essentially decided to make the pal sit in the same spot for an hour unbeknownst to you. Also, no matter what settings you use, the game always manages to stutter for some reason, even on an SSD, which I thought is weird. The game requires an SSD, which is fine, but I wanted to bring this up because I don't know why the game is stuttering. I have like a high-end Samsung SSD that this game is installed on, and it just isn't working in the way it should be. The game also just doesn't have a super unique art style. You can tell the game is made in Unreal because it has the Unreal Engine look. So much so that my girlfriend said it looked like Fortnite. She has no real knowledge on how these games engines work or anything, but she said it looked like Fortnite, and that's how I kind of knew, yeah, I'm correct in saying that this has the Unreal Engine look. I'm not really bashing it for this, but I do wish it had a more unique art style because the characters look nice, the pals look nice, especially the more original ones. I just wish the overall art style was a bit more thought out, cohesive, and unique is all. The story is also just not told well. There's a lot of lore and stuff, but I feel like as a game, this should have cutscenes. I just really honestly think it should. Also, missions and segments of the story can be skipped accidentally if you just go to the towers instead of doing missions that lead up to them. Imagine completing all the gyms in Pokemon without doing the villain plot or ever fighting your rival because the game kind of just allows you to blow past that stuff accidentally. Especially imagine doing this like I did on accident without knowing until like I saw some YouTube videos showing that there should be a lot more missions going around in this game. Despite those flaws, in the end, Palworld is addicting as hell. They fixed a ton of the progression from the pre-launch period, making the game just really feel a lot more cohesive with its gameplay elements, the base building, the combat, the traversal. Everything kind of just feels like it had that one tweak that locked everything into place. They've kind of uniquely mixed the monster tamer genre with the survival genre, meaning that automation is encouraged. You're encouraged to kind of catch everything that you can. You're encouraged to catch multiples of things because you can upgrade your pals, your bases, use items from these pals to build things in your base, ultimately improving the player experience a ton, and again, encouraging catching, encouraging monster taming. Something that I feel like even something like Pokemon doesn't encourage until like Pokemon Legends Arceus. And on top of that, there's just a ton of content for anyone willing to drop $30. I'm not even halfway through the story and I've dropped 40 hours on the game. I'm still doing like the stuff leading up to the 4th tower. All I'm saying is that Pocket Pair has really created a game that's ultimately amazing. And with more time and effort and stuff put in, I think it's going to continue to do well, sell well, have a lot of players, and I hope to see them expand the game a lot more in the future. Maybe they drop some paid expansions. I know they've been dropping a lot of free content over the years, and I hope they do more of that. But I don't know, have you played Palworld? How do you feel about it? Do you think the controversies ultimately stop you from wanting to play the game, or in spite of that, it actually makes you want to play the game because, you know, everybody is on the fuck Nintendo wave. Again, tell me how you feel in that comment section down below. But this is me, your man, Jet Set Shattuck. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, follow your boy on Twitter, and join the Discord. Links, as always, are down below in the description. We're trying to hit 1,000 subs, so if you could, again, subscribe. But remember, Hot Faraga turns to Cold Blizzaga. Chill out with some of my other videos. Peace, and have a good one.